Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Conversations Cafe Marching On Together, Part 2. This is our second run at the weekly recording for Conversations Cafe, and I'm so excited for you all to join us here. We have an excellent show lined up. We're going to be working with a group panel of folks who come from different intersections that have been hit by our current realities, and we all have been impacted in one way or another. And one of the important things to really think about as we're joined around, finding ourselves in a sort of a new predicament here, is that this is going to be an adjustment period for a lot of us, and it's kind of becoming a new normal, even if it's just going to be temporary. And Conversations Cafe has always been intended to be a place where we can talk about mental health and the way it impacts our communities at different intersections. And we know we're never able to get the complete, total conversation on mental health. It's too complicated, and it's rather arrogant to think that you could accomplish that all in one sort of discussion. But our mission tonight is to dive in a little bit, gain some understanding, and share some messages from people and their perspectives on not just what might be issues, what might be wrong, what might be a problem, but also what are solutions, what are tools for hope, tools for resiliency, and ways to grow and improve. This episode marks our second time doing a live stream, and we're so excited to have our guests on who also are joining us in this sort of this pilot endeavor. And without too much further delay, you're going to notice a big connection here is that people are coming from different walks of life, but a lot of their relationships are all linked in that they were involved in professions or passions in which they relied on other people, public spaces, restaurants, entertainment venues, places in which our current situation is impacted by not just isolation, but also by the fact that we're losing an opportunity to physically connect one-to-one. And that's really the big sort of unifying point here with our guest tonight is about the reliance on that human connection to both share passions and also even share trades or business. Um, Before we dive into our full panel, I want to introduce a special guest with us tonight, someone who is going to be promoting a very necessary tool, especially in our current realities. Her name is Margaux Shain, and she is with DBSA, that is DBSA, the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance. And she's going to be talking a little bit about a very valuable tool and resource. So without further ado, I'd like everyone to welcome to Conversations Cafe, Margaux Shain. So let's make sure we get Margaux's video up in here. Hi, Margaux.
Hi, Carl. Thank you so much for having me on. And I just want to thank you so much for hosting. Thanks to you and Mike and the whole crew for Hope for the Day for having us all on this special podcast today.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much. So Margaux, we're going to want you to stick around for the whole panel, but I wanted to bring you on first because I think it's important that we focus on in this sort of new reality that we're in where there's self-isolation. One of the central themes is that we're not able to, for large groups of people, physically meet up. Could you tell us a little bit about what DBSA is and then also what has been their adjustment to what's going on right now?
Yeah, sure. So DBSA is the Depression Bipolar Support Alliance. The headquarters is in Chicago, and I represent the Greater Chicago network. There's actually over 500 chapters across the U.S. and globally. So we're a tight-knit group. We have about 75 people that reach out each year. And we specifically focus on educational meetings. So we bring together peer groups to get together and talk through the different mood disorders that are facing individuals and families. Friends are allowed to come in, but this is a free service that's offered to anybody. And what's really great too is that the peer-led instructor is somebody that has faced these issues before. So they've been well-trained in these issues and are there to support within the community itself. Typically, the model is that the support groups meet in person and pretty frequently, as often as, once a month, or if they deem that they want to meet sooner than sooner. Now, within this reality that we're facing right now, we're realizing that with mental health, we need to bond together even closer during this time. And so we've switched into virtual peer group sessions, and we realized that they're incredibly popular. I was on a call with the entire DBSA national group the other day, and the demand is so high that we're looking at increasing virtual peer group sessions. Right now, we're offering a session at least once a day, and it goes through the weekends. The sessions last about an hour, and there's sign-ups in advance to guarantee your spot. So far, we've got sign-ups all the way going through until April 16th. And within my smaller chapter, as I mentioned, I represent the Greater Chicago network. And so this covers places like Palatine and Evanston and Northwestern Hospital. And we are looking at doing our own Zoom live check-in that we're hoping to share the information as soon as we can. But that is what we've been really focused on, is trying to provide the services that we've offered more traditionally in person, but now virtually, just with the social distancing recommendations. Another thing that we're focused on is I work on a quarterly newsletter called The Spectrum, and we're instead providing a weekly newsletter to provide information of ways for self-care in terms of activities like workouts and free resources for staying active, providing a recommendation on a recipe to maybe try and cook for, you know, yourself or your family. And then other things just to provide some, you know, just hope and resilience, as you said in your opening remarks, Carl. Carl, can you hear me?
Looks like Carl may be dropped out here, so I will step in. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you, Mike.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to Carl, but I'll join you here. And it sounds like you got a lot of excellent things happening to support our communities and synthesize the connection that we all kind of need, our belonging and the love that we're missing out on currently with, you know, everything that's going on. So, I think that overall there's a lot of wonderful showing of community right now. People coming out to really not really fight as much and bicker about things that don't seem very important, and like band together a little bit more. So, you back with us, Carl? You're muted, my friend. I can see you, but I cannot hear you. and it didn't allow me to put my video stream on, so I just you left Margaux hanging.
I'm sorry, Margaux. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
My screen suddenly went black. I straight up thought I was plugged in. My computer was plugged in, and the thing.
Whoopsie.
Yeah. So good. Thank you, Mike. Teamwork. We're in this together. So awesome. But I don't want to draw attention away from the fact that, Margaux, I can't thank you enough for sharing this very, very critical piece of information. Thankfully, I had the whole stream going in a different screen on the desktop so I could hear it. But just so everyone knows, we will be having the links for DBSA available in our comment sections and in our social media. And we hope, with the grace and permission of DBSA, hope to be amplifying and promoting the offerings on a consistent basis in the weeks coming forward, because we're hopefully today is positioned to do outreach and education. The fact is that we still, you know, we want to be a bridge connecting people to necessary resources. And one of the ways to look at mental health and the impacts of everything that's going on right now is that for some people, they do need a physical connection, and we have to make adaptations. It's imperfect, but DBSA is creating such a pivotal and necessary tool in this time. Margaux, I mean, I can't thank you enough for sharing that information. And you know, really, if you're gonna be cool to stay on with us, I think we're gonna bring on our other guests. So thank you so much. Again, that's Margaux.
Thank you, Carl, Mike.
Oh, and thank you, Mike, also.
You got it, guys. You got it.
And if you can't see, Mike is our education lead. He's not on video right now. He might join us a little bit later, but he's, you know, keeping the plans going along with us. So right now, we're going to be bringing on our panel guests as well. And this group, as I mentioned before, carries a number of different intersections within professional and creative communities. And we found this sort of connection and lineage and how we're all sort of being impacted by this. And so we're going to have a bit of a free-ranging conversation. I don't have too many prompts for them, but I want to first introduce everyone who's going to be joining us. And they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves as they come on. So you're going to see joining on the screen. First, we're going to be bringing on Angel Overton and giving them a second for the video to warm up as we pull them off of mute. Angel, you with us?
Yes, hello.
Angel, pleasure to meet you. Where are you coming from, Angel?
So I am the volunteer coordinator at Hope for the Day, as some people may know. I am also a production assistant at Live Nation. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today.
Thank you so much. Next coming on is a great homie named Laurel. Laurel, let's make sure we can hear and see you. Laurel, hello,
Yeah.
Laurel.
Hi, My name is Laurel. I am a barista at Sip of Hope, and when I'm not there, I'm a comedian.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Laura, for joining us.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Maesie. Maesie, let's make sure we can hear and see you. Starting the video. Maesie, come in, Maesie. And you are.
Hi.
Hey, Maesie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maesie. I am also on the event squad over at Hope for the Day. I assist Angel and our events director, Becca. And when I'm not there, I am the assistant manager at one of Dark Matter Coffee's locations at Star Lounge.
Wonderful. Good to see you, Maesie. Next up, we have Ryan. Ryan, tuning in live. Let's get that video in mute. That was my phone dropping. Ryan, there you are.
Hey everybody, I'm Phillip Ryan Block. I am the founder and CEO of Independent Ear Music Group, as well as the founder of We the Collective. We're a modern creative agency, and yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. And last but definitely not least, 6'4" from North Carolina. If you're a Bulls fan, that makes a lot of sense. Trevor, can you hear us?
Yeah, what's up? Hi.
Hey, Trevor.
Yeah, hi. Trevor Rose Hamblin. I'm the owner and head brewer at Old Irving Brewing Company, as well as an educator for Hope for the Day.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for making time for us tonight and joining the larger Hope for the Day community on Conversations Cafe. So the theme of the show is Marching On Together. And technically, this is Marching On Together Part 2, and I promised I wouldn't say. I keep wanting to use the boogaloo term for everything that's Part 2, but
Don't say it.
I won't say it. So, Marching On Together, this is about looking at the realities we face and trying to also think about how do we press on? How do we not just sort of sit in place and suffer? And for some people, that can be a big challenge. For others, maybe this is an opportunity and new growth. But what I'd like to know is for each and one of you, touch on a little bit on how everything is impacting your professional intersection here and how are you personally adjusting? Gonna throw this out to Laurel first.
Yeah, so obviously the Sip of Hope coffee shop is not open right now. So that's definitely impacted my daily life. And then as far as comedy, I do sketch, improv, and stand-up, which are all things that happen in front of a live audience. So with all of the theaters closed and shows being postponed, it's definitely been a big adjustment to find ways to still make work that no one will see face to face.
Thanks for sharing that. Ryan, given where you are in that, how has it been impacting you all?
It was an interesting impact. As most of the people with Hope for the Day know, we were running an event, or supposed to be running an event during South by Southwest in Austin last week. And it was 5 months of planning that went up in smoke. And so we said, all right, we still had to bring some of the programming, we still had to do something. And so we ended up transitioning to a fully live streamed experience. But other than that, I do most of my work from home. So it's just weird to not go get coffee and not go to the movies and it's just been weird going outside in general because the energy is off. But yeah.
I dig that. Maesie.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with Ryan on that. It is definitely a different vibe going outside. Just even in my neighborhood, you don't really see much movement going on. So it's been a little weird, kind of just fun, interesting, not seeing the hustle and bustle of Chicago all the time. But unlike Soap, Dark Matter still has each location open for a couple hours a day now. So my biggest adjustment thing is kind of just, it's also usually at my location, it's very packed and busy and loud and energetic. And the vibe there is just always incredible. And now it's just kind of weird. So it's been interesting kind of going into work and being alone and being in the quiet. But the community we have around our location is incredible. So our customers coming in make it worth it every day. So.
I dig that. And, going into, I think it's interesting that places like coffee shops qualify as essential businesses right now. And that is certainly not debatable. But I think it's interesting that there are certain types of restaurants that fit into that pattern, which is kind of a transition over to Trevor. You're on another facet of that sort of same industry.
Yeah. Are we going to me now? Is that
Oh yes, that's
great.
pitching you.
That was a
That was a
segue
good
right
little
into me. Cool.
handoff.
Got it. So obviously, there's kind of a lot going on my life right now. Me and my wife are about to have a baby in about 4 weeks. Yeah, thank you so much. Obviously, when we were planning this whole thing, we had set up a baby shower and we had all these ideas, and then of course the baby shower had to be canceled, and we were going to have it at the brewery, and then it ended up being like 6 friends standing 6 feet apart after I prepped all the food with gloves and trying to be overly protective of all the food, and so obviously we had to adjust there. As a business owner, as one of the owners on the ground, obviously you're going through your day-to-day life, and then all of a sudden the biggest part of our business, which is the pub itself, just closes down. So then you have to kind of think about your business in a different light. So we pivoted almost right away, and kind of like when we're talking about mental health and then suicide prevention, the first thing I could think of was just to get the employees safe, and we wanted to make sure their bodies were safe. So we basically were already going to close down before the big announcement happened, and we did that. We started doing charitable things for our employees, sending up a GoFundMe right away. My business partner, Jeff, did that pretty much straight away to make sure they had a little bit of cash in case everything hit the fan, which clearly it did. And then we had to rethink the way that we're going to do business. So now what we're doing is we're kind of upping our production in cans, because along that list of businesses that are allowed to stay open are also retail can shops and bars and things like that. And then a lot of these bars are rethinking their business, so they're selling packaged product to go. So we're selling a ton of cans, no kegs. I have a bunch of kegs in house I can't use, so I'm just packaging a bunch of beer, sending it out the back door to our distributor, selling a bunch to the front door. We have curbside pickup, so I've just been selling it through that. We've been able to keep our core employees and bring in additional help who works in tips that we get from the people who come and pick up. We have a complete no-touch service. We're very, very careful. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind adjusting to this.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think, drawing on that is, if you've had to sort of look at these different adjustments, and I want to put that into the head of sort of like looking at the different outlets or different ways to, if this is a wall, what do we do about that? I'm kind of wondering, Angel, sitting over there at Live Nation, where we've seen a lot of musicians and creatives sort of say, okay, well, we're going to stream stuff, but the live venue, how are things, how has that sort of been, and what's the flex or adjustment?
Yeah. So it's definitely been very heartbreaking to see so many festivals get canceled and venues close down, because concerts are my happy place. I love being in a live music environment, as do all the fans. So it's been hard to adjust to this new reality for sure. But in the meantime, the live music production community has really come together to focus on networking and educating each other on what we can be doing during this downtime. So that's been really good to find a community within other people that work production for venues. And then as far as the Hope for the Day events go, we've been working on ideas to keep our volunteers engaged virtually. Usually volunteers come and help out at all of our events, but seeing as there are no events right now, we've been working on creative ideas to keep them engaged. We do have a volunteer summit coming up that is digital, so plugging that in. It's on Sunday, April 5th. So, yeah.
Well done. And I think this is important for everyone at home or listening, wherever you might be, hopefully at home, isolated, to think about, especially if you remember sort of where here Margaux and DBSA is having to make adjustments for clinical therapy sessions or support groups and things like that. But when we talk about these other industries, from comedy to music to even the retail side of whether it's a coffee shop or a bar. I think one of the things we might be able to really latch on to is the fact that pre everything that's been going on, it could have been easy to sort of think of these as, just the light, trivial, fun things, the parts, not so much the support group, right? But like the other parts of our lives, we would have thought, well, going out to eat, it's a privilege and it is what it is. And going to a concert, it's a thing, it's an entertainment, but it's not going to a comedy show or performing. These all might have seemed like light things, but I wonder, it seems like we're starting to learn, or it's really distilled how valuable that, relying on other people is because of these physical spaces. So I'm wondering, you've been really good talking about adjustments. What's been a big challenge for everyone? Just as you're making, we've talked about, we're doing the best we can. What's been a big challenge for you all? Anyone want to jump in there? I'll start with Ryan.
As far as, everything's been a challenge, right? Because the whole world shifted. But for me, I think the biggest challenge was reevaluating the entirety of my business model, right? So, being in the music industry, we had to look at it and knowing that we can't send artists on tour right now. Being in one of my other working relationships is taking over and marketing for a medical practice here in Northern Illinois. That we've had to not completely change, but alter our messaging a bit. So I think it's just really been having to shift when most people aren't used to it.
Yeah.
I think
I can jump in and say,
okay.
We'll go Margaux.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I could just jump in and say personally, it's been kind of a challenge to not go to the gym and go to like my workout classes and things like that. So just try to find creative ways to get my body moving, whether it's like walking the dog or I never thought I would get into virtual workout classes, but I'm trying them. So that's been kind of a challenge.
Thank you for that, Angel.
So adjusting to virtual content is definitely something I'm also struggling with. I know a lot of artists have been playing around with doing live stream concerts, and they are definitely a newer concept to get used to because it's very different from the live experience. So I've been working on shifting my mindset when it comes to live stream concerts for artists. So.
Laurel, I've been paying attention to your Instagram, and I'm wondering, trying to make comedy for the adjustment. Yeah. What's that been like?
It's been pretty different. One of the comedy jobs that I do is I work in the marketing department at the Field Museum, and I create comedic content for them.
I was wondering how that led to comedy, but I'm glad you brought that back in.
This would be a great time to announce I'm a scientist, but I'm not. But it's been interesting trying to use our platform when we don't actually have an open museum to market. So how do we keep science education moving forward with a comedic slant if there's not a physical space that we can sort of bring these people to? And then just in, at Second City, all of our shows have been postponed. And so it's been a challenge to just keep in mind that those shows will happen, but not right now. We need to give it a minute. So that's been a challenge for sure.
I like that. That's a good way to look at it. And it makes me, Maesie, you sort of been talking about a little bit earlier how, even with the coffee shop, there's these adjustments that you have to make. I know, had to pop in there once and see the 6-foot adjustments and things like that. But as a manager for, has there been a challenge, and I think Trevor might be able to sound in on this too, has there been a challenge in sort of working with other staff, who do have to show up and do have to be a part of this and sort of keeping them motivated, how's that been?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of my role at my shop is definitely the key motivator. That's what I try to give myself the job title of. So definitely in times like this, it's just kind of a little bit more heightened than it normally would be. So not only am I trying to keep everyone motivated and trying to help them feel safe in our environment, because it is kind of scary, going out and commuting to work. A lot of our people commute to work. So making sure that they know that this is a safe space and that we're trying everything that we can do to kind of make it a safe space is like what I've been kind of prioritizing a lot these past couple of weeks. So just making sure that like I'm on my A game and like just giving out as much knowledge as I am getting and receiving from
Faded out that last part there, but I think, the thoughts are pretty solid. Trevor?
Yeah, I mean, from a leadership perspective, because I'm kind of the guy on the scene in terms of ownership. I'm there probably the most in terms of hours. Those first couple days were so challenging because people are coming to me with a ton of questions, and I'm supposed to be the guy with the answers, and I have none. People were coming up to me and be like, "So Trevor, how do you plan to keep us all safe?" And I was like, that's a fantastic question. I'll take any kind of opinions on how you think we should do this because there's no book for this. So it became, I've had to kind of transition, and now we're kind of going, and I've always kind of led this way anyways. We're going from leadership by one to leadership by all, and everything became very democratic. And then kind of knowing, what works and what doesn't has just been really tough, especially with just not knowing what's next. That's the hardest part and the biggest challenge for me is just I don't know what to tell people. All I can do is inspire hope within 24 hours.
I think that's all that we can do.
That's all. That's it. So.
I got to put in a little piece here. One of the things that when we go out into community spaces, especially schools, junior highs, the younger ages, or even working with parents of youth, but this is for everybody. One of the things that we need to be teaching that's for mental health is resilience. And that word is easy to be a hashtag or a buzzword and doesn't mean anything. But the long story short is resilience is ultimately bounce back ability. And I hope everyone at home or wherever you're listening or engaging this live stream is paying attention to how all these great voices have looked at the situation in front of them and have really talked about not just seeing the wall and saying, well, that's it, but saying, okay, maybe I got to go left, got to go right, maybe I got to dig under, maybe I got to go over, but looking at different options. Or trying to run, or we're going to go right through it. And, two big parts about that. What Trevor said and what you've sort of all echoed about this is that one of the best things, a great signature of resiliency is that anyone has ever heard of the term, there's being a boss, and then there's being a leader. And a boss tells you what to do and orders everyone around and da-da-da-da-da-da. But a leader tries to figure things out and tries to facilitate a teamwork. And one of the things that you've all sort of echoed into your pieces, and Trevor, you put it right on the head with, people turn to you, is this situation right now can make us feel helpless. And so I find it very interesting that all of us, all seven of us, plus Mike, and Rick, must have felt helpless at some point in this. And I think it's important to be able to acknowledge that because, why we say it's okay not to be okay is that we can't be, we're not all superheroes like 100% of the time. And I just want to sort of ask, like, have you felt helpless at any moment? And, Trevor, you kind of touched on this, so I'm going to start with you, Trevor, but have you ever felt helpless? And what was the sort of like real-time thing that helped you, your people asked you, but what was the sort of little nugget that helped you move past that helplessness or deal with it?
I got to tell you, going and switching our business right around to, a bustling brew pub and then having it just completely empty. And the only thing that's happening is us trying to figure out how to do takeout as a place that does not do a ton of takeout. Obviously, it's me. It's my assistant manager. She's at the front door with me. I've got my GM in the kitchen cooking with our chef because he has kitchen experience. I've got one guy running back and forth, and we're all kind of figuring it out in real time. And I saw that, and I saw these cats coming to me with honesty and working together to complete a task. And I think when I started to think about it in that way and thinking about this is something that's affecting everybody. It doesn't know class or gender or race or anything like that. And I started to see kind of a parallel between that and mental health. That's when it started to all come together. I'm like, oh, way more people are affected by this than we know, just like mental health, just like depression, just like anything like that. We weren't talking about it for a long time. And now the only way that we can fix it is as a group. And we started having these guests come in and come to the front door, and they were giving me like words of inspiration, and they were like, hang in there guys, you got this. And they were like leaving fat tips for our employees, and I was telling them back like, hey, have hope. I was putting the bracelets in like every takeout bag. I need more, by the way. And and we were inspiring each other for hope, and I was like, wow, this is really a beautiful thing. I wish we could do this more often for one another, not just in times of crazy panic. So that's how I've kind of gotten through it.
Yeah.
And that sounds a lot like what you're talking about, Laurel, where you were touching on with trying to figure out how do we adapt with the comedy and with the museum. And I just, was there any sort of like real-time moment where you were just like, no? And was there a little nugget, like what was the like, sort of thing that got you to like look forward?
Yeah, I've always really considered myself like a writer first and a live performer second. And then when live performance was taken away, I was like, all right, if you're a writer, like step up, this should be easy. But it was definitely a challenge to pivot. Now I try to make like one comedic video a day, and that sort of, that scratches that itch to create something that people see and get to respond to, even if they can only respond virtually. And I've seen a lot of other comedians in the exact same position where we're figuring out how to do the work we already like doing, but virtually. And it's a big challenge. Yeah, I definitely was like, oh God, how are we gonna do this? But it's I'm liking seeing more art out there. I've noticed a lot more art from friends. So.
Yeah. So, and I think that's really good insight. And I'd like to, actually bounce over to Margaux for a second here. And when we think about this with people feeling helpless, turning to support groups is definitely a place that becomes necessary. And even all the way up to like to the official levels. And I wonder if there's something we could speak on when we talk about, do you think support groups might be, people might be turning to support groups because they feel like they're in crisis, and a support group can handle a certain level of engagement, but maybe they're getting overtaxed. I just sort of wonder, like, feeling helpless, right? What's your thoughts on that? Sort of like, have you seen an uptick in support groups? Obviously, it's early, but.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly an important issue that we're trying to help solve, as we go day by day. But right now, the Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, the national organization, pulls together a weekly call to understand what member needs are and concerns, and how are the online support groups looking, how many people showed up, how often are they meeting, because DBSA National has their own live peer group that meet every single day, and those are the ones I mentioned that go out until April 16th. But then there are other chapters that are kind of doing their own because they've got their own member base. And so there has been a significant demand. And so we're looking at expanding to have more peer group sessions just because people are in need. And these peer groups are, the sign-up sheets are getting filled, like a week and a half or so in advance. So we're really trying to combat it.
And thank you for answering that, because, and I bring that up right sort of in this moment too, because one of the things that we're looking at in the sense of feeling helpless and how do we put it back through this is that sometimes what people need to know is they need to get in touch with someone where it's not just, oh, it's going to be all right and that's that, but they just need to hear from other people's voices that they're not alone with what they're going through. And because look, when you're in crisis, and again, please engage, this will be the little message part, please engage Hope for the Days, resource information if you feel that you are unsafe right now. But crisis can also have a lot of different spectrums to it. And I want to just double down here that crisis doesn't always look like someone who is at physical imminent risk of taking their own life. Crisis can be someone sitting down and realizing, my job is uncertain. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know how long I have to be isolated. I don't know how long these things are. And that can just create an intensive feeling of helplessness. And I hope people are sort of paying attention to a big piece of the mechanics is not just the what's next, but trying to visualize where can I draw inspiration from? What's similar to what I've gone through? We're all unique and special, but at the same time, I sort of want to pivot over to Angel and Maesie and Ryan, starting with Angel, just on those continued notes of helplessness. And what was the sort of kernel for you, like that helped maybe sort of keep you from thinking of this and like you're going into a bigger hole and you don't know where to go?
Yeah, connecting with other people that are going through the same thing as me has definitely been super helpful. Because like you said, it makes you feel like you're not alone and you have someone else you can lean on in this situation. I'm a part of a few Facebook groups for the music industry. And it's been super helpful to have conversations with other people going through similar situations and being able to talk through it with someone. That's been a very helpful thing in staying resilient for me.
Appreciate that. Ryan, why don't you jump in there?
Yeah, so I mean, I remember it too. It was the Friday that Trump made the announcement about the national state of emergency. And up until that point in time, I was like, I'm gung-ho on this event. We're going to make it happen one way or the other. Like, it's got to be. And then that happened. And then we had to, I mean, it was just a matter of pulling the plug and then re-diverting it. But I took a couple of days to just feel like really shitty. And then I got back to work because it was a matter of, and they say this obviously in show business all the time, but the show must go on. The show just had to change formats. But for me, I'm looking at this as an opportunity, right? Because for the first time, quite literally ever, at least in all of our existences, we're all feeling the same thing. No matter where we are in the world, we're all feeling it. So we're more universally connected now than we ever have been before. So a couple of years ago, following the death of Mac Miller, I had said I was going to start this online chat where I'd use my Zoom room much like this and just open it up for whatever time and have people come in. And I started that this week, 2 years later, but I started it. And that's it. It's much to the way of how the DBSA thing works, but it's just 1 hour a day. I just leave my room open and whomever wants to come in can come in. But that's, again, it's another ability to create a safe space. But I guarantee you, I wouldn't have been able to get through it without the support system that I have. So
that's beautiful. And we're going to be sharing what Ryan's talking about, the mental health open call, which he said started daily on the 24th, but it's 1 hour each day at 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Central.
That's what the schedule is this week. It may change next week, but I'm just trying to find a way that like works for everybody's schedule. So, I mean, because a lot of us are still working from home, we still have a job that we have to report to and clients to take care of. So we don't stop, but sometimes this could just be a good break in the middle of the day.
And we'll make sure to share that in our social media. Check our Insta stories and other places, just so that people can, giving anyone an outlet anywhere. There's no one magic wand about this. Maesie, I want to know if you had a few notes on there as well.
Yeah, I think it kind of hit me on the Sunday, not this Sunday, but the Sunday that passed. That's when it kind of got really serious in my head, and I was like, oh, that's when like our work, like higher ups were, our owner, Jesse Diaz, was like personally reaching out to us and was like, okay, this is serious. These are the steps that we're going to take to make sure that we got your back and you guys are safe with us. So really that's kind of when it took off for me. Sorry, my Charlie's about to jump up here and try to get in the video. I can already feel
Charlie is an animal. We better see Charlie.
But yeah, so my biggest thing was, after all the stuff started getting like really heavy on everyone, it was just like really inspirational. And honestly, like it was just amazing to kind of see like just our customers and just like the people that I work with every day kind of just like step up and just extend a hand. And like we are kind of all like Ryan said, we're all in this together and we're all experiencing the same thing and feeling the same thing. So having our community reach out to us and tipping us very generously and buying a bunch of beans and like donating to our GoFundMe is just like incredible and very humbling to know that we have like a support system beyond what we thought we did. And just like all of us family at Dark Matter and stuff, just everyone reaching out to each other every day and making sure that like we're all good, and asking each other how we're feeling today, and kind of just doing like an extra step and opening up the conversation a little bit more has been really nice. And it's made me feel a lot more at ease with everything, knowing that I have a really supportive community backing me with every move I make.
And that's, I think, thank you so much for that. One of the things I want everyone to sort of pay attention to, whether you're listening to this in real time or you're visiting this as a podcast or later recording, is we're in this together. That's not just vaporware. That's not just a fluffy little statement. I mean, metaphysically speaking, yeah, we're all impacted by this. And I want to sort of be concise about this. For a lot of us, and there's the sort of the pejorative of like first world problems kind of thing, but for a lot of us, we're insulated from a lot of maybe the ancient world's issues, okay? And I just want to be really careful how I say this. There's a term that carries a lot of baggage right now because it's used in different ways, but in an older era, the term liberalism didn't have the political context that it's had for the last 100 plus years. Liberalism was like a mechanical word that meant, and again, everyone listen, I'm not talking about any sort of context right now. Liberalism just meant that if someone was called a liberal, it was they had the privilege to choose a position on something based on the cost and convenience to themselves, okay? So I know it's really hard to discipline ourselves and like, don't apply this to like this isn't an implication of anything. Just, it was like a mechanical word, like, is water wet? Yes. Is this, do you breathe oxygen? Liberalism was just, you're choosing or picking based on this because there is no liberalism in crisis. There's either act or don't act, run for higher ground or don't. And running for higher ground could save your life. Not running for higher ground could save your life. Running for higher ground could hurt you, could not hurt you. So liberalism was like, you have the time and the space to say, well, maybe I will do this, maybe I won't do this. And here's where I bring that up. Right now, we're in a space where that has been taken from us. We only have to make decisions on we're either doing or not doing. And that's really the mechanics of like what's unifying us right now, is that we, for a lot of times, and we still see a little bit of this of like people saying, well, I'm not really going to isolate myself. And we're still like, so here's kind of where I want to go with that. This is a new era. A lot of us have never had to be in a position where we really had to make hardline decisions that were for the benefit of not just ourselves, but our whole community. And I think that breaks a lot of normalcy for us. And I tend to want to think about this as like when the isolation ends, or if it ends, there were a lot of things that we all did as a community before. And if we go back to normalcy, that's great. But I just sort of philosophically want to push it out to everyone, this idea of like, we're talking about how we're making adjustments and how we're making adjustments. Is there anything that whenever we go back to a sort of a normal state, you kind of like to leave in the old days, and maybe there's some new things that you learned, at least in this early parts of isolations, that you'd like to see stick around as we go forward? That might be a little unwieldy of a question, but I'm wondering if anyone wants to sort of jump in on it head first.
I'll jump in on that one. I mean, normalcy is relative, right? So we all know that what's normal to me may not be normal to Carl or anybody else in this panel. But for me, I think it's forcing me to take time for what me and my family need, as opposed to just running, because now I can't go and have client meetings until 2:00 in the morning. It doesn't work. I can't travel as much. So that's impacted. So for me, the biggest adjustment, but the biggest blessing is I've been home more.
Great. So if there was one thing you'd like to leave in whatever the world was before this isolation began, and what's something, and you just leave it there, we just start there. What's something you want to leave back in the old world? Doubt. Oh, okay. Just shots fired right now. Anyone else?
If we can do it now, we can do it anytime.
Yeah, I love it. Anyone else got anything in there? Margaux, I'm going to put you on the spot.
I think
Angel.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I think something I want to take forward, after the whole thing is over or whatever, I definitely want to continue to maintain relationships with people and reach out more than I previously did. I've been texting a lot of my friends that are like in the industry more, just checking up on people. So I think this is a really good opportunity to make that more of a habit, to check in on people that may be hurting or that need someone.
Anyone else want to jump in there? What's something you'd want to leave back or bring with you forward?
I can jump in.
think
I agree with Angel. I definitely want to, going forward, bring just my awareness to everything and other people's situations. I think I know like my situation is very specific to me, but other people might be going through something similar and might be feeling similar things, but their situation could be completely different than mine. So I want to take all this awareness that I have right now and like honing in on my relationships with people and my community and just keeping that consistent going forward. And I also just want to leave like I am also one of those people that I'm just like, go, go, go. Like I'm doing something every single day. I never have a break. And what's really kind of like a little surprise with all this stuff happening is I'm finally getting time to kind of like sit back and read a book and like go over like things and just kind of relax and have some me time and focus on some of my own like creativeness that I might not get to do every day. So that's something that I'm kind of looking forward to. Just kind of make time for myself even in the future.
And I thought, thank you very much, Maesie. And Margaux, were you going to say something there?
Yeah, I was going to say that I've learned a lot, and I definitely appreciate like the slower pace and kind of what Maesie was saying, just enjoying like reading a book or like walking around the neighborhood, just enjoying nature. And I would continue to check in and keep my relationships with my family and friends, and also to support the local businesses that are working really hard right now as well as in the future too.
That's great. And before I move off of that question, did anyone else want to throw some things in there?
I'd like to say something. Yeah, I'm still chewing on Ryan, on what Ryan said about doubt. I like when I got, it was a very simple one word thing, but if there's something you could leave back behind, doubt. I really love that, because obviously like in a day-to-day where there's so much uncertainty, like there's not room for doubt, right? Like we don't have that space. We just have to figure it out. And I've always felt pretty confident that I'm the kind of guy, after running so many businesses and going through some pretty critical incidences, that I was a guy who could always figure it out. But I gotta tell you, like those first couple of days into this thing, I had a lot of doubt, and it shedded pretty quick, and we've seen some amazing things happen. So I just really wanted to kind of go back and really push that one home for myself. I love that. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, and I'm audible, right?
Oh yeah, we can hear you. There's some feedback. Yeah.
Your background is loud. You're good, but your background is loud.
The atmosphere is loud.
Jesus.
It sounds like someone's vacuuming under your feet.
That's literally my computer. My laptop is about to explode. I think the gain was too high on my mic. But Laurel, did you want to say something there?
Sure. Yeah. I think during all of this, I've been checking in with my family a lot more and calling them on the phone, which has been nice. Same thing with like all of the Sip of Hope staff. We all get together and have Zoom meetings like this, which has been something I would like to take into the future, checking in on the people close to me. And yeah, one thing I'll leave behind is like not washing our hands all the time. I think this is great. I feel so good. Yeah, keep that up.
I think it's terrible.
That's good. There's a few notes I wanted to touch on, but with this part up, for my own 2 cents in here, I grew up and there was a lot of linking to mental health for it, but I've always been a very solitary person. And I noticed a lot of, from the meme side of things, people are like, wait, now we have to stay by ourselves, and it's not going to be any big deal. But be careful what you wish for. I think one of the most wonderful things, and I think it's echoed through a lot of your comments, is I don't want to make this isn't about false silver linings. This is more about searching for truths and reality. And I think that whether by hook or crook or force or whatever, I think that people are really starting to learn, and now I will only speak for myself. I am starting to really learn how much I took for granted human connection as being someone who's consistently solitary. That was always at my own agency. And, there's things linked to anxiety about that and everything, not to be joked about, very legitimate mental health realities. But I also sort of called the shots on when that was. I left the room when I wanted to. I associated when I wanted to. And having that choice taken away is completely different. And obviously, people who've gone through that for other reasons are not really, well, duh. But I think the thing I'd want to leave behind and carry with me is to not take for granted the privilege, even when I need it for my own mental health, not take for granted the privilege of being able to define when I need my solitude, and really doubling down on the value of like those human connection points. And I wanted to talk about something on the technical side before we move into sort of some closing things, because I think it's been such a pleasure to talk with all of you. And this goes back to Hope for the Day. In our outreach and education, we try to explain to people that we assert one of the largest obstacles to effective suicide prevention and mental health is this stigma based on social and cultural factors that perpetuate silence for a number of different reasons and different facets. And inside of that, we try and educate people that, if you simplify the understanding of your mind, think of it like a bottle of soda that can shake up and fill it with pressure, and we're constantly valving things out. In this time and space, valving as our self-care tool is really hard to find valves and tools, especially if you feel isolated. But there also needs to be resources that are beyond just talking friend to friend. Sometimes we need to elevate it in our current situation. We've talked a lot about online support groups, but let's also recognize that there might need to be other opportunities and tools out there, because maybe not everyone has an internet connection. I almost said DSL connection. Aging myself. Margaux, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about, so we talked about online support groups, but what about something like, telehealth? What is that, and what is that as an access point for people?
Yes, I think it's another really great resource that the medical community is tapping into. So what we were talking about previously were the peer support groups, and those are non-clinical. So as I mentioned, a lot of people who lead those meetings are people that have suffered from depression or bipolar. So they've experienced it within themselves, but they're not clinical. So other resources include telehealth. And so if you're not sure if you do have medical insurance and you're not sure if you have the coverage, you can call the insurance company just to double check to see if you have telehealth options. But a lot of physicians are going in that direction, especially right now, just so people don't have to come into the clinic, or maybe the clinic is not operating right now because they're solely doing telehealth. So what a telehealth meeting would look like is if you have a phone, you could dial into the phone number, and you could either have a voice conversation or you could have a video conversation where you see the doctor. And you could describe your symptoms. And so some of these telehealth conversations have even talked about, symptoms of what's going on right now. So those are an opportunity. There's other telehealth opportunities that can help support the mental health community, including therapists have gone virtual in order to make sure that they are meeting their clients' needs. So that's an option. There have been infertility clinics that are going virtual too right now. So ensuring that, whatever care that person's going through is covered, or they have an opportunity to talk to the doctor about the treatment plan, as well as psychiatry. So in general, psychiatry appointments are met in person. But doctors are changing those methods. I know that Northwestern is going virtual to having their psychiatry meetings. So whatever level of care, but you know, I think this group just wants everybody listening to know that whether you or your family or friends are going through any challenges, that any level of care is out there.
Thank you so much. And I think that it goes without saying it's critical, but we still need to say it. And one of the things we'll be making sure is, I'm sure DBSA as well, is we want to make sure that we can promote and highlight those resources. Because I don't know if I may have misspoken and at one point said that some of the support groups they should not have been framed as being clinical, but maybe therapeutic, but not clinical, and that can be conflated. But thank you so much, Margaux, because we need to, you know, make no doubt about it, where some of us are finding our resilience through tools within our community and interpersonal relationships and connections. The fact of the matter is that mental health can elevate to a place where self-care tools are not necessarily going to be sufficient, and these require professional grade responses. And there are tools out there, both not just if you have insurance or not, if you have to have questions about sliding scale and access for things that where you wouldn't have coverage. There is no easy answers for that, but it's important to reach out to groups, not just Hope for the Day or DBSA. There's also NAMI and AFSP and other groups who aren't just there to send you a brochure. They're also there to help you navigate and trying to figure out these questions. And in this current time, everyone is having to make unique adjustments. So telehealth and other sorts of options in which we're taking the actual clinical practice into the digital space beyond analog, it is possible. You are not trapped in your home, and it's important for you all to hear that. And that also brings me back sort of full circle where we are at this current time, is that there is a clinical level of support, which is like a medical level. And, you know, we want to normalize the mental health conversation, that it's perfectly natural. You know, some people may be going to the hospitals because they've injured their leg or because they're having complications with their diabetes, having nothing to do with a flu-like symptoms. And we still need those services available. Well, the same thing for mental health. There are other legitimate medical situations, and you're not trapped out in the cold, even though we might be used to, as a community, putting mental health in a corner and thinking that it's some sort of thing to be ashamed of. So with that said, well, there's the clinical level. There's also things we can be doing for ourselves where if we're not experiencing those intensive levels of challenge, and we typically call these kind of things self-care. And I was sort of foreshadowing this when I was talking about the idea of valves, where there's things in our lives that can build up pressure and anxiety, insecurity, a sense of not knowing what happens next can build up pressure. Stress builds up pressure, all these things that can have very negative impacts in your life. And a good way of sort of figuring out if you have early signs and symptoms of a mental health crisis is figuring out whether your valves are getting rid of that pressure, or no matter what you do, you can't get rid of that pressure on your own. That becomes an early sign or symptom that you need to escalate care to a professional level. So I wanted to close out today with asking people, you know, our guests, what your sort of self-care tools are. What are your sort of ways of checking in and taking care of your mental health? We would call them valves. And I cheated a little bit, and it was a great idea through our education lead, Mike Vinopal. We've got a little interactive activity I thought we would close out this episode with, if people would feel comfortable sharing what their self-care valves are. And if you're watching live right now, we'd love for you to share in the comments section. But also, if you want to do what we're about to do right now, write out your self-care valve and screenshot it or take a picture of it and post it online and tag Hope for the Day and DBSA and all of our partners where you see the links. We like to do that to help raise the visibility of this conversation and continue in the ongoing process of sort of breaking stigma and silence. So for any guest who's interested, who would like to share their self-care answer?
I can do that.
And yeah, Trevor, jump on in, buddy.
Sure. So I'm kind of doing two. I know you're supposed to choose one, so I filled up both sides of the paper.
That's
Because one way I'm doing self-care and trying to keep some normalcy is, of course, preparing for the baby. But preparing for the baby. And then the other one that I do is I go and I play online games, which is why I'm wearing this headset right now. Why it's so nerdy. Discord's a community where I can talk to all my friends. We can play video games together. It just keeps some kind of normalcy to our lives. So that's what I do.
That's great. We've got Maesie.
Yeah. I wrote a bunch down, but I don't know. I was like, I'm just gonna make a list. But I can tell you, I've been painting a lot, which is nice. It soothes me, it relaxes me, and I have a ton of books that I'm making my way through right now. So that's what I'm really kind of focusing on in all my free time.
Oh, thank you very much, Maesie. Laurel.
So mine is playing music around the house. Oh, is that backwards? Whatever.
No, it shows right to me.
It is?
Yeah, same, yep.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good news. But yeah, that's just made it feel like everything I'm doing is just one big party for myself. So I've liked that a lot. Makes it feel very populated in here.
Beautiful, beautiful. Angel?
So the one I wrote down is watching live concert recordings. That's not backwards. So I've been sort of going through some archives and finding videos of full concerts from years ago. It's really nice to relive an experience. But I've also been focusing on doing things like reading and also painting on canvas. It's very relaxing and slower pace than what I'm used to.
Oh, that's great. Margaux?
So my self-care has been long walks with my dog. So I have a golden retriever, and so I try to walk him maybe 45 minutes to an hour or so. But I've had a goal with myself of trying to do a 10,000 step count every single day just to make sure that I'm active. So he's been helping me a lot.
Oh, that's great. And I'm putting him on the spot. He doesn't know he's about to join. But since you heard him, Mike, what's your self-care?
Oh. Laughter, things that make me laugh. I like to be really silly. I'm annoying the hell out of Erin Dunbar, another Sip of Hope employee and also my fiance. But I think she likes it too. So I got make stuff, throwing back to what Laurel said. Making stuff's a good way to get your mind off things, be it food, music, collages, coloring, whatever you want. Make some stuff, or snuggling my dog. And I drew a little drawing of a dog with a marker.
Oh, that's great.
Yay.
And he unfortunately had to take off from the video, but Mr. Block wanted to share with everyone that his self-care go-to tool is giving himself time to breathe. And I'm going to wind down with my self-care tool is now mine is is it normal to
It's normal for us.
Yeah, so I see how everyone else is doing now. Mine is taking a break to watch pro wrestling. Love me some wrestling. So that's usually my go-to tool when I get really wound up. And with that,
Let's all hold them up real quick.
we can do here's a little photo op for folks.
Hold them up. Great.
Beautiful.
You all look marvelous.
And we'll look at that. Oh, there it is. Beautiful. I hope somebody screen capped that.
I screen capped it on ours.
As the live streamers say, clip it. So I want to thank all of our guests, Margaux, Angel, Laurel, Maesie, Trevor, Mike. You're kind of like the couch person who's always at the crib, but so you're a guest, but you're also like a resident too. And Mr. Block, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Conversations Cafe. And thank you all of you for joining us, whether you're listening to this in real time or you're listening to this after the recording on March 26th. I want to thank you all for joining us for this conversation, Marching On Together Part 2. Conversations Cafe is a monthly mental health podcast, and now it's turning into a weekly live stream. And we're able to produce this with the generous support from our friends and partners in prevention, AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Banyan Treatment Center in Jansen. And we cannot put on this kind of work without our homie Rick and producer of Anthologies of Hope. So I want to thank you and all of our guests. And most importantly, I want to thank our audience and the people who tuned in. The fact of the matter is that when we talk about mental health, it's never going to be a catch-all conversation. We're never going to get it all done in one space. These are all small bites. And in our current reality right now, I said this in last week's recording or live stream, is that we're all kind of in a Star Trek moment. We're all sort of riding the USS Enterprise here. We're all our own sort of Captain Kirks or Picards or Cisco's or Janeways. In that this is all a first for everyone. And I think folks like Mr. Black and Brian and every one of our guests who kept reiterating that we're basically all in this together. And this is scary for everyone, but it doesn't have to be hopeless. And this doesn't have to be a place where we feel helpless, because we're not alone. And even though it might be hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, we can keep pushing through that tunnel and making torches of hope for each other by being open and communicating when we're scared, our fears, our concerns, and not keeping those things silent. If we can hold on to those truths, then I promise you, whether you're watching this or listening to this, that all together we will make it through. So again, thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Everybody love everybody. Good night.